to save my life. I come in because it's cold outside, come in with a jacket, ready, gonna be warm, gonna be cozy, and then it's like a furnace in here, and I like, all right. So today I was like, oh, it is going to be 70 degrees. And it was so hot in there yesterday. I'm not going to be hot today. Today I am going to be even temperature. I'm going to moderate my temperature. And now it is freezing. I am so cold. So sorry if you see me like trying to warm up my hands over the campfire. This light is not giving off heat. Which is fine. I don't want it to like burn me, but I wouldn't mind if it gave off a little bit of heat. Anyways, that was my commentary. Okay, so back to the salaries for constitutional officers. Well, Mr. President, looks like we're talking about your salary. I might want to throw up an amendment for that $2 per day per diem. Model ourselves after Nevada. But I would make it $5 so you could at least afford the salad bar downstairs. Seems reasonable. Okay. So constitutional officers' salaries, that last bill we all voted on, and I don't think any of us filed conflict of interest. So whatever that's worth. Let's see here. How the minority gets work done in supermajority chambers. We already know that. Oh, this is a nice one. Wait, gotta get in the queue. Okay. This is from NCSL, State Legislature's news special report. Groups help lawmakers pursue civility and bipartisanship, the unicorns of politics, a state legislature's news special report, March 21, 2023. Ask 97-year-old Arlene Reichert for a surefire way to promote bipartisanship, and she'll cite a personal experience that led her to conclude that legislators should not sit separately by party across the proverbial aisle. Well, we don't do that. We sit, however, our seating, I was asked this question just this morning, how our seating is done. It is done like so many other things in this building by seniority. If you have seniority, you get to pick where you sit before others do. If you do not, you have to wait until others pick where they sit, and then you get filed in accordingly. My seniority has me 2 rows back from where I was for 4 years. I actually didn't ask to move for the first times I had opportunity to move. I didn't ask to move because I sat by the same people for the entirety of my first 4 years. I had right there was Senator Walz, right there was Senator Wishart, and then myself, and then right in front of me was Senator Matt Hansen for 4 years. And so I was like, well, if you all aren't moving, we got a good groove going here, that's fine. But Senator Matt Hansen was term limited out, and I knew that Senator Walz and Senator Wishart were moving to that back area there, and I thought, you know what, I think I'd like to move a little bit further back. So I put in the request to move further back, hence 2 rows back. I'm not 100% on board with it though. I'm so used to sitting like off to the side over there. I see Senator Hardin sits over there a lot, and I'm like, gotta be real, Senator Hardin. I'm a little envious of you sitting over in that spot, because that's what I used to think of as my spot. Of course, it wasn't my spot, but I sat there a lot when, get this, when I wasn't talking. I used to sit over there a lot when I wasn't talking, because I used to not talk so much. So I had a spot that wasn't my desk. The good old days, memories. Okay, so back to the seating assignment. So legislators should not sit separated by party across the proverbial aisle. Right Reichert, one of the 100 delegates elected to rewrite Montana's constitution in 1972, says she and her colleagues decided to sit in alphabetical order. When we gathered in Helena for our orientation, the first thing we decided is we were going to forget partisan politics, and that was a very important factor, says Reichert, the oldest of the 10 delegates still living. By the time the Constitution was written, we didn't even know the political party affiliations of our seatmates. Great. Not only did the collection of Montanans from all walks of life come to a unanimous agreement on the Constitution 6 days ahead of schedule, they also became lifelong friends, Reichert said. Having Republicans and Democrats sit in alternating seats or sitting alphabetically or just a couple of the many ways states have tried to foster bipartisanship among lawmakers. I got to be honest. I'm glad we don't sit alphabetically. And I think this is a time where I'm going to do it. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to speak for my brother. I think he appreciates that we don't sit alphabetically because I do not think he wants to sit next to me. So I, of course, stand for correction. He's welcome to correct the record if he wants, but I don't think that he would appreciate us sitting alphabetically unless it was something like his seat was there and then we started over the next row and I was here. Maybe that would be enough distance, but as it is for people who are not inside the chamber. So I sit, I don't know, is it stage right, stage left? Because I'm on this, am I on the stage or are they this stage? Hard to say. I sit on the right-hand side, all the way on the end of the right-hand side, and my brother sits on the left-hand side, all the way on the end. So the only way we could really sit further apart is to sit on those ends, but at opposite front and back. So we do not sit close to each other.
1 minute.
And if it were alphabetical, I fear, actually, the way I was just describing it, if we went all the way across in a row, alphabetical, and he was at the end of the row, we would be exactly where we are now. Maybe it would have worked out for us, Senator Don Kavanaugh. Maybe it would have. Gamble I'm not willing to take. I think the way we do it now is just fine. Okay. At a time when evidence is of a deep divide shows up every day on social media and in the news, a growing number of national organizations are dedicated to promoting bipartisanship and civility. They offer legislators fresh ideas about working across the aisles. They say it takes a steady effort to build and strengthen bipartisan work. But researchers also say that the effort improves passage rates for legislation and can build public trust. Across the aisle, exploring bipartisanship, NCSL's.
That's your time, Senator, and you are next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. NCSL's Across the Aisles podcast examines the steady effort many lawmakers are making to strengthen civility and bipartisan work. Quote, civility is not just good manners, it's really being able to get something done, says Beth Howell, the Republican former Speaker of the Tennessee House who joined the discussion. You can listen now. Okay, back to the article. Laurel Harbridge Young, an associate political science professor at Northwestern University and a faculty fellow at the Institute for Policy Research, has studied bipartisanship for years at the federal and state levels. What we find is that there's strong positive relationship between legislators' records of bringing in bipartisan co-sponsors on their legislation and having legislative success, she says. That's true even when a party has a so-called supermajority, enabling it to pass whatever it wants without minority support. We find that bipartisanship is valuable for both majority and minority members, Harbridge Young says. Bipartisanship gets a boost. In the past decade or so, national organizations have formed to develop best practices and train state legislators. The National Institute for Civil Discourse formed in the wake of a shooting that wounded U.S. Representative Gabby Giffords of Arizona and killed 6 others. has a program called Next Generation, which runs civility workshops. Compromise is not a dirty word, and working with each other is actually a goal we should all strive for, says Republican former Tennessee House Speaker Beth Harwell, who manages the Next Generation program. She made a point of bringing the civility workshop to her chamber while she was in leadership. Quote, I found a lot of the skills that I learned in this program were very beneficial in helping members understand the role of a minority party, the importance of listening to their ideas and taking the thoughts that they gave and allowing them to be applied to the policy. Oh gosh, I need to get in the queue. Apologies, just occurred to me. Okay. Applied to the policies we are forming, Harwell says. Another key point from the program for the majority party was to treat others what way we would like to be treated. Well, that's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Yeah. I think the golden rule is a good rule. The do unto others. Do unto others. Do no harm. It's another one. Those are good rules to live by. Sometimes when people criticize me or say unkind things, I think, are you trying to hurt me? Because let me just tell you, you cannot be as critical of me as I am of myself. Although I would not lay the criticism on others that I lay upon myself. So maybe I shouldn't do unto others. Be kinder to others than you are to yourself. Treat yourself with as much kindness as you would treat others with. There we go. That'd be good. Okay. Lost my place. That's shocking. Okay. The Next Generation program goes to a state only when invited by the leadership. To ensure there's strong support, the workshops start with participants getting to know one another beyond party and beyond the work in the Capitol. Quote, one of the first things we do is really develop an understanding of each other, Harwell says. Thank you, Mr. President. It's surprising how much people have never really taken the time to get to know each other, even though they serve in a legislative body. When you understand someone else's experiences, you're more willing to treat them with respect. Thank you. Oh my goodness gracious. Tanner just brought me my jacket. That is so sweet. See, and it's Administrative Professionals Day, and you're still doing sweet things for me. Thank you. That was so thoughtful. I'm going to put it on because I am actually cold. Oh, and it's got my buttons on it. I forgot I wasn't wearing buttons today. Oh, thank you, Tanner. Gosh, Tanner and Margaret are the best. Okay. Leadership of the Delaware House of Representatives decided to hold the civility workshop to open this year's
That's your time.
Thank you.
Senator. And Senator Hunt, you're next recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Ballard was here. Sometimes I go to other people's desks and talk to them, and Senator Dungan's mic is way up here, and Senator Frederickson. There have been some senators where they've got to pull it like all the way up taut and straight, and couldn't be me. This weekend, I got some news via Instagram stories, the way we all get our news, and I learned on there that one of my friends, who I've known for a really long time, is moving out of Nebraska. And I was kind of surprised by that because she's one of those girlies who's, you know, progressive but proud Nebraskan, corn-fed, born and raised type of gal, and really kind of made like Midwestern life a part of her identity. And I saw on her Instagram story, she posted a picture at the airport, and she said something like, "This is my last time at the airport as a resident of Nebraska." And that's how I learned that she's moving. And I want to talk about something that I think is very important, which is the idea of politics driving Nebraskans out of their own homes and own communities. And this friend of mine, she's not leaving because of a lack of job opportunities or because of a personal issue or anything like that. She's leaving because of politics. Specifically, she's leaving because of the radical culture wars issues that are being discussed by this legislature this year in 2023. And she's not the only one. People are saying, enough, that's it. They're saying what you won't say. What even moderates of this body, even people who are trying to get along, even people who are trying to find a way out of this, are not willing to say enough. It's been enough. And this is a problem that all of us should be really concerned about. When politics are driving people out of their communities, it means we're not doing something right. It means that we're failing the people who put their trust in us to make the state a better place. And it means that we're hurting ourselves in the long run. I've heard some of you say, well, what about conservatives? We have to make the state a safe place for conservatives. I think you guys are okay. The fact that a trans person can get health care, whether they're 35 or 18, or the fact that a woman who is experiencing a miscarriage at 12 weeks can go to the doctor and that she can trust that doctor to provide the standard of care and help her. Procedures that many of your wives have had, by the way. It doesn't make the state less safe for you as a conservative. It's so absurd to say something like that, but you say it with your own mouths. Well, how are we going to make the state safe for conservatives? Bro, we want the state to be safe for everybody. Don't you? Don't you want that? We're hurting ourselves. We live in a democracy, and that means that we have the right to vote for the people who are going to represent us in government. And we trust these people to make decisions on our behalf, decisions that will make our lives better and our communities stronger. But when we make decisions that go against the will of the people we represent, when we prioritize our own political agenda over the well-being of our constituents, when we take votes that literally, physically, emotionally, mentally harm the people we represent.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. When we do that, we're failing in our duty. We're failing this institution, we're failing each other, and we're failing the people of Nebraska. And the consequences of these failures are real. When people leave their communities, they take with them their skills and their knowledge and their experience, their families, in often cases, their passion. And they leave behind these holes in our communities that are really difficult to fill. They take with them a piece of our state's future. If we want to create a bright future for Nebraska, we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep our best and our brightest here. And I know you know that because your kids are telling you, your wives are begging you. What these policies are is not popular. And you know this. Let's work our way out. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Ibach has guests in the north balcony, fourth graders from Bryan Elementary in Lexington, Nebraska. Please stand and be recognized by your Nebraska Legislature. Senator Kavanaugh, you're recognized to speak, and this is your last time before your close.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay. I have been schooled by my 9-year-old. Golden rule is out. Platinum rule is in. The platinum rule is a variation of the golden rule that calls for a more thoughtful approach when dealing with others. As opposed to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, as a golden rule states, the platinum rule asks you to do unto others wherever possible as they would want to be done to them. That is a much better approach. That is much more thoughtful. It does not assume that everyone thinks and feels and engages the same way you do. It causes you to pause and take into consideration the person in front of you and their wants and needs. Yeah. Makes sense. I received a text message from my husband informing me of this, that golden rule out. Platinum rule is where it is at. There's a diamond rule. Diamond rule, treat others as they wish you to treat them. I think that one's going to take more for me to unpack. So I'm going to just come back to that another time after I can read it again. Okay. I did just submit some amendments to this bill that, again, thank you to my staff. I am quite excited about. I think that they are fantastic. And when we get to them, feel free to vote green. They don't create any sort of constitutional crisis. Oh my goodness, I see we have a new page in our midst. Well. Even got the dress code memo. Senator Wayne has joined the pages up front. I don't know if I'm disclosing a secret here or not, but one late night, my first year, Senator Wayne was sitting up front with the pages, and I asked what he did, and he told me he always does this. At least once a year, he sits with the pages and acts as a page for part of the day. So I don't know if you all do anything, like you have any grunt work that you make the newest or the youngest page, but he has done this before. So I guess he's not the greenest of green pages, but be sure and give him some hard task for sure. For sure. If I happen to punch the button and get Senator Wayne, I'll probably send him to the bill room. He knows where that is. That's too easy because that's too close. That's close to your office. No, I'm not going to do that. All right. I got to get creative. Unless somebody beats me to it. Somebody could beat me to it. I see Senator Aguilar. He's over there. He's thinking about if he gets Senator Wayne to come, he's thinking about what he's going to do. Oh boy. Now I put everybody onto it. Everybody's going to be thinking. No. All right. So appreciate our pages.
1 minute.
And it's an interesting experience, I can imagine. So the pages do all kinds of things. You maybe see them in committee hearings. They help distribute the materials during committee hearings. This is very old school, but we have in committee hearing, we have old pads of paper, and they are oftentimes, we're very frugal in the state of Nebraska. They are oftentimes recycled, repurposed letterhead from previous senators, and they bind them into little notepads, and we have these little notepads, quarter page notepads, and legit write notes and pass notes. I've had a note passed to me during a committee hearing just to say, I'm stepping out. Can you take over chairing the hearing?
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Hunt, you are recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Continuing some of my thoughts that I was just sharing. I've also heard some of you argue that if our politics don't work for someone, then maybe they should just leave. Maybe this isn't the right state for them. But this is so short-sighted and narrow-minded. Not everybody can leave so easily. And why would you be proud of living in a state where people want to leave just because of our politics? When we lose people because of bad politics, we're hurting ourselves in the long run. We're weakening our communities. We weaken our communities, we reduce our collective knowledge and our collective skills, and we make it harder for our entire state to thrive. And that's whether we're targeting people based on their race or their gender or their immigration status or their gender identity or sexual orientation, what language they speak, whatever it may be. We need to do better. We need to make sure that our elected officials are listening to the will of the people and that they're making decisions that are best for all of us, not just best for their own political careers, and not just best for the leaders of their own personal parties that they belong to, whatever that is. We have to prioritize the needs of our constituents, the needs of residents of Nebraska, over any kind of narrow partisan interests at all. And we have to make sure that we're creating a welcoming and inclusive environment for all Nebraskans. We can't afford to drive people away because of their political beliefs, their race, their gender, or any other factor. We need to be a state that welcomes everyone, that values everyone, that works to create a better future for everybody. As I said before, the idea that people should simply leave if they don't agree with the politics of their state or community is short-sighted and narrow-minded. It assumes that people can easily uproot themselves from their homes, families, and communities, and that doing so will have no negative consequences for anyone. That you would personally be better off, perhaps, if there were no trans people in Nebraska. But the reality is that when people leave, it has a ripple effect that touches everyone. Everyone in Nebraska is a really valuable asset that can help our communities thrive, and losing them can set us back in many ways. When people leave, we also lose the benefits of their diverse perspectives and ideas. A state or a community that's open to a range of viewpoints and ideas is more likely to be innovative and successful. But when people with different perspectives feel unwelcome or unsupported, they're more likely to leave. And then that leads to homogenization of the state, where everybody thinks and acts in the same way. It hurts creativity, it hurts innovation, it hurts progress in business. And another consequence of people leaving is that it weakens our social fabric. Communities are built on relationships, and when people move away, those relationships are disrupted. It's a really big deal that, I got on this topic because I saw that a good friend of mine I didn't know was moving away, and I saw that online on her Instagram story that this was her last time in Nebraska as a Nebraska resident, or whatever she said. And it's amazing to me because this is a person who has been involved in the nonprofit community for a long time. She's worked her way up to the top of her field in the nonprofit community.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. She's been active and engaged. She's worked at different foundations, and in the world and in that industry, she worked all the way to the top. So this isn't somebody moving for a job. This is someone who already has a job and is able to work remotely and is choosing not to do that in our state anymore. And why is that? It's because of our politics. It's literally because of this legislature in this session specifically. The radical culture war issues you are pushing against the will of Nebraskans, and the way you have run roughshod over the people of Nebraska who have trusted you with their vote, who trust you to make Nebraska a place for everyone, and you have let them down. So you understand when some of you stand up and say things like, good, if our politics don't work for you, then maybe you should move. When you say that, you're really hurting yourself, and you're really putting your own state down. When people leave, we also lose the economic benefits that they bring. People who leave, they take their money with them. My friend who's moving, she's keeping her job. She's keeping her 6-figure job, by the way, but that money's going out of Nebraska. This is going to have a negative aspect.
That's your time,
Thank
Senator.
you, Mr. President.
You're next in the queue, and that's your last time on the amendment.
Thank you. When people take their income out of Nebraska, it has a negative impact, most of all, on our local economies. That's people who aren't going to the corner bakery anymore, who aren't going to the coffee shop anymore, who aren't going to the bookstore anymore. To say nothing about, the taxes and fees and things that they aren't paying to the state anymore. They also take with them the potential for future economic growth. They might have been involved in starting or growing a business or investing in local projects or contributing to the local tax base. When we lose all of this social capital, that's what makes us more divided and more distrustful, more isolated, and all of these factors contribute to a weaker, less vibrant community. They make it harder for us to attract new residents in the first place, to grow our economy, to build a thriving, sustainable, stable future for our state. It also affects the people who choose to remain here. It makes it harder for them to feel a sense of belonging and purpose, and they see their friends and neighbors leaving the state and they wonder what their future holds. So what can we do to prevent more people from leaving? For one thing, we've got to get off this anti-trans bill. Everybody hates it. Everybody in the body hates it. Nebraskans hate it. I hate it. I would rather do literally anything else. I even offered to trade a vote to Senator Linehan for the Opportunity Scholarship bill. That's how deep. It's just gone way too far when we're getting into the attacks on people's human rights. You want a tax credit or an incentive? All we have is money that we give out to people for tax credits. That's all we do in here, other than discriminate hate against other people who the introducer of 574 says she doesn't even want to have living in this state. So that's where we're left. Why is that something that we should be proud of? It's a shame. Past statesmen of this state, past legislatures never would have even gone there. We would never even be entertaining a conversation like this. We need to create a more welcoming, inclusive, and supportive community. And that means prioritizing the needs of our residents, the needs of Nebraskans who reach out to us all the time, over the culture war, over the narrow partisan interests that nobody actually cares about, that don't have any impact on the quality of your life, but could have a deep, deep impact on harming someone else. It means investing in our schools, investing in our healthcare system, our infrastructure, so we can provide the best quality of life to people. And that's when we have a state that we can really be proud of, when we know that people are better off. Not better off because the books are banned, not better off because we're not learning about, racial segregation in the history of our country, not better off because there's no more trans and gay people in the state, not better off because women are dying from miscarriages during their pregnancies. It means promoting diversity. It means equity and justice for everybody. It means equality before the law so that everybody feels welcome and valued. And it means creating opportunities for people to participate in the political process so their voices are heard and their needs are met. And they know that they have a voice at the ballot box, and they know that they actually have an opportunity to vote for someone who's going to represent them. The idea that people should simply leave if they don't agree with the politics of a state is wrong. When people leave, we lose their skills, knowledge, and experience.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. And we lose the benefit of their diverse perspectives and ideas. It weakens our social fabric. It weakens our economic power. It divides us. It's got us arguing. It reduces our sense of community. But by working to create a more welcoming and supportive community, we can prevent people from leaving. And we can build a stronger, more vibrant state for everybody. And we can model that behavior here in the legislature. I think that's what we should commit to do. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to close on AM 1273.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so let's see here. I was reading this article. Bipartisanship gets a boost. This is from NCSL. I'm probably going to reread where I left off. The leadership of the Delaware House of Representatives decided to hold the civility workshop to open this year's session. Majority Leader Valerie Longhurst, D., Again, that's irrelevant, but says they wanted to welcome new members and bounce back from the disconnect and of the pandemic years of Zoom calls. While Democrats are in the majority, Longhurst says the state has a history of the parties working together, but they wanted to build on that. They're now planning a dinner together and activities like volleyball or zip lining. She says the workshop helped in ways constituents will be able to observe. What we did discuss in our conference civility training was social media and attacking people. Attacking people, the negatively, it just breeds more negativity. Longhurst says, I think so far this year, you haven't seen the negativity on social media because people are respecting each other more. Natalie Wood, director of the Center for Legislative Strengthening at the National Conference of State Legislators, says that every state has rules and traditions aimed at supporting free and fair debate. They allow the majority to get their way, she says, but they also allow the minority to get their say. States have different means to ensure the minority party has a role in committees and to give minority party bills a chance. Some states make sure every bill gets a committee hearing. Hey, that's Nebraska. New Hampshire goes even further. Every bill will get a vote in the House. Wow, that's something. And Texas has a decades-long tradition of giving some committee chairmanships to the minority party. All legislatures have an array of rules about how to address each other formally in the chamber and rules against name calling and inappropriate language. Another reason it's of importance to understand the rules and to follow the rules is that they can also ensure decorum and civility, Wood says, and that really goes hand in hand with bipartisanship. A younger perspective. Another national group focused on bipartisanship, the Millennial Action PAC, targets young lawmakers, says its president and CEO, Leila Zeiden. We exist to help bridge the partisan divide and improve American democracy, she says. MAP, Millennial Action Project, was really born out of a sense of possibility that the rising generation could do things differently. To that end, MAP helps young state legislators, generally under 45. What? I still qualify. What? Yes. Awesome. Form future caucuses with bipartisan leadership to explore how to work together to get things done. So far, there are future caucuses in more than 30 states focused on issues such as affordable housing, college tuition rates, voting reforms, and access to health care. Zeiden notes that Gen Zers, people born between 1997 and 2013, increased their numbers in state legislatures by 170% in the last election, and independent is the fastest growing party affiliation. She thinks this generation isn't buying into hardline party politics. Quote, it's not really how long people are operating, Zeiden says. Quote, and that opens up a lot of opportunity to have these really productive conversations inside the legislature where you can really pick and choose the ideas in ways that feel relevant and resonant to your community. Zeiden says these caucuses are certainly about issues, but they also include a good bit of socializing, like in Kansas, where the Future Caucus got together for one of its early meetings to try axe throwing. Interesting. I've never done axe throwing. I think I'd like it. Sounds like a good exercise. I don't think it would be easy because axes are heavy. You have to get it over your head and throw it. And then kind of like a dart, you got to make sure it hits the right way so that it gets into the wood or whatever you're throwing the axe at.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you. Call of the House.
There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
9 ayes, 1 nay, Mr. President, on the motion to place the House under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel on the floor, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senators Dorn, Wishart, Jacobson, and McDonald, please return to the chamber. The House is under the call. All unexcused members are now present. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 1273. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
No ayes, 35 nays, Mr. President, on adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is not adopted. Raise the call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, Senator Kavanaugh would move to amend with AM 1281.
Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, you're recognized to open on the amendment.
Okay, friends, this is the amendment that I will probably vote for. And it'd be great if you voted for it too. I filed 2 amendments, so I got to look up exactly what this one is before I get into it. Okay, on page 6, line 4, after military leave, insert family medical leave. What? Yes, let's do it. Let's insert family medical leave into LB 816. Colleagues, wouldn't that be amazing? After military leave, family medical leave. Pretty nice. I don't know. You don't even have to think twice. Just do it. Feels good. Doesn't it? Doesn't it feel good? I think it does. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the underlying bill. So it is on page 6, line 4. Okay, on page 6, gotta go down. Do, 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 do. This is my hold music while I'm scrolling down to page 6. Do, 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 do. Going to page 6. All right, page 6, line 4. Okay, so agency 18. Okay. The appropriation or the salary limit. Okay, I'll read the whole thing. Bottom of page 5, line 28. It is the intent of the legislature that if the appropriation or the salary limit is insufficient in this program, Agency 16, Department of Revenue. Okay, that's the program. A program number 13, Salary Tax Commissioner. If the salary limit is insufficient in this program to meet anticipated expenditures, the tax commissioner shall request an additional appropriation or a higher salary limit or both from the legislature by the usual deficit process. The appropriation or the salary limit shall not be administratively increased solely by the Department of Administrative Services without legislative authorization. Wait a second. Am I reading this wrong? Page 6, line 4. Page 6, line 4. I don't know. I'm looking at something wrong. Did we adopt an amendment? We adopted an amendment. We did. Well, let me go to that. Okay, bear with me. Page 6. Again, the hold music, scrolling down to page 6. Do, 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 scrolling down to page 6. Okay. That's page 5. Okay, here we go. Now we're cooking with gas. At the top of page 5, last sentence, or last line, 30. Total expenditures for permanent and temporary salaries and per diems means all remuneration paid to employees treated as taxable compensation by the Internal Revenue Service or subject to Social Security coverage, specifically including payments accounted for as vacation, holidays, sick leave, military leave, family medical leave. I think this implies that then you would have to have that be paid. Maternity leave, administrative leave, compensatory leave, deferred compensation, or any other similar form. Okay, full disclosure. This doesn't really do anything, even if adopted. It just states that is taxable income. but it does lay the groundwork for us being a family-friendly state, implying that maybe at some point we will allow for paid family medical leave. What? That would be amazing. That is the dream, folks. That is the dream. So that is what AM 1281 does. It inserts family medical leave after military leave on page 6, line 4 of the adopted version of LB 816, not the original green copy. So sorry for the confusion there at the start. Okay. Now, hold on. How much time do I have left, Mr. President?
4 minutes, 50 seconds.
Okay. An opening always throws me off a bit because it's 10 minutes and I'm used to the 5-minute increments. And so I almost wish that it was like 5 minutes and then 5 minutes, like you break it up 5 minutes. But yeah, so really AM 1281 is giving us an opportunity as a legislature to entertain, and this would really be for state employees and constitutional officers. Don't forget about our constitutional officers. I see you, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. It would entertain the idea of offering paid family medical leave for state employees. All right. Has there ever been a wackier idea? No, because it's not wacky at all. Or yes, there has been a wackier idea because it's not wacky. It is not a wacky concept. We could be a leader in this state in paid family medical leave, not maternity, medical. So when I worked for the university, I started looking into paid family medical leave and the policy at the university. That sent me down quite the little journey. I haven't looked at the university. I believe at least they were working on a new policy. I don't know if they adopted their new policy, but when I was there, if you were a managerial level employee, after 2 years of service to the university, you qualified basically for 6 months of paid medical leave, whether that was maternity or for anything that you needed, medical, gallbladder, prostate, chemo, you name it, you had up to 6 months annually covered leave. Of course, it had to be medically necessary. It had to fall under the specific FMLA guidelines to be paid for, but you got it. If, however, you were an hourly employee, I at that time calculated that you would have to work for 5 years, not take a single day of vacation, and maintain your accrued sick leave before you would have enough time to take off 3 months with the birth of a child. 5 years and utilizing zero leave in that 5 years. So for anyone who has worked while pregnant, that would be impossible because you have medical appointments that you have to go to. Not have to, really should. Highly recommended. It's not state employees, it's just constitutional officers.
Judges and the different people.
Okay. Sorry, state employees. My bad. Don't worry. I got you next time on some other bill, I'm sure. It is just for the constitutional officers. So, LB 816 contains the salaries and benefits for constitutional officers, judges, public service commissioners, the parole board, and the tax commissioner. Well, I assume that all of them would benefit from this. All of them probably have some variation of an illness that they could use compensation for. So we still should do it. Wow. The ticket number on this one. The last bill we moved was under $600,000, around $600,000. It was 600. Definitely under $1 million. That was our salaries. There's 49 of us. This one is $34,589,401. That was okay. I am curious how many people this encompasses. That would be interesting to find out. And what the various salaries are within this. I can find that. You know how I can find that out? I can read the bill, because the bill will tell me all that, because that's the job of the bill. It won't be new language necessarily unless we've changed something, but it'll be in there. Yeah, it'll have the general. Yeah, there we go. It's got all the different. Now, does it say who the positions are, though?
That's your time.
Thank
Senator,
you, Mr. President.
Senator Hunt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. When this session began, and the most controversial thing that was happening was regarding the Committee on Committees assignments and chairman, elections and things like that. A small group of senators, including myself, met with Senator Arch to talk about kind of a cards on the table, setting the tone. Things are already acrimonious. Can we smooth the waters a little bit? Can we find a way to keep moving forward? And this was maybe day like 3 or 4, I don't know, maybe a little bit later, but it was very early in the session. And a couple of us in the meeting mentioned to Speaker Arch that LB 574 was probably going to be the biggest bombshell of the session. And he was very surprised to hear that. He was like, what, really? That one? I wouldn't have thought that. And that was kind of the canary in the coal mine to me a little bit, maybe the wrong analogy, but that set off such a red flag for me when he said that. Today, as all of this is happening in Nebraska and our legislature, it's also a very dark day for democracy in Montana. I mentioned a couple times on the mic ago, and this is all happening in real time right now. As we are in session, so is Montana, and they have stuff going on around the same issue because they have a transgender representative elected in Montana, just like all of us, just like all of those people who are in that legislature. Representative Zephyr, and she has been an outspoken advocate for trans rights against a bill that they have exactly like our LB 574. And she made a statement saying that if this bill passes, if it results in children harming themselves or taking their own lives, and we know that calls to our own crisis centers in Nebraska spiked after general file debate on 574. They went up again on select file debate on 574. So it's not even passing the bill that harms people in our state, and not just the kids, but the families and teachers and loved ones and people who care about them. It's even introducing it, it's even debating it, is causing these spikes and calls to suicide hotlines in Nebraska of trans and gender expansive kids who are afraid of what this legislature is doing. So Representative Zephyr made this comment, and she was prevented from speaking ever again in the legislature in Montana. She'd put her light on, she'd get in the queue, just like I'm in the queue right now. And I bet, out of 48 of you other senators, probably 46 of you would rather that I not be in the queue and we move on to other things. But you can't prevent me from speaking, and you know that. You wouldn't do that. The presiding officer, who's now Senator Dorn sitting up there, Senator Dorn would never see me in the queue and then say, we're going to just skip over you. That would just not be done. But that's what's being done in Montana today. They don't have a rule for that. They don't have a precedent for that. It would be just like if that happened here. And today, the Montana House of Representatives took a vote to expel or censure Representative Zephyr, and that motion was successful. And Senator Zephyr is now barred from the House of Representatives for the rest of their session in Montana. She will be able to vote via video, vote remotely. She won't be able to be on the floor.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. She won't be able to attend anything else at the Capitol for the rest of the session because she stood up for trans rights. And we knew this would happen. We knew this was coming. We knew that this is the logical outcome of bills like LB 574. People like me I'm under investigation now by the NADC for conflict of interest because I stood up for trans rights. Representative Zephyr got kicked out of her body for standing up for trans rights. This is happening all over the country, and it is a direct consequence of these policies. It's not worth it. The degradation of the civility, of the productivity, of the respect for the institution over one bill, it's not worth it, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're next in the queue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is this my first time on this one? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, yeah, that's terrible, Senator Hunt. That's terrible. It's terrible. It's unconscionable. Stifling of free speech, silencing an entire constituency represented by that member. That's terrible. Because you disagree with the person. Because you disagree with the person. Man, no one would be in this chamber if we kicked people out when we disagreed. My brother and I disagree like 50 times a day, and he still gives me a ride. Civil discourse is important, but it's not the end all. Sometimes civility isn't going to get the job done. Sometimes you have to be honest and direct. And Representative Zephyr was being honest and direct when she said, "You will have blood on your hands." If you take offense to that, then you should reflect on that. Why do you take offense to that? If it is untrue, then it should be discounted and you should move on. It's the truth to it that's the problem. That's the statement of speaking truth to power. The body, whether it's Montana or Nebraska or any other state, the legislature is the power. And speaking truth to the legislature is our responsibility. It's the responsibility of every member of this legislature, of Montana's legislature, of all legislatures. It is your responsibility to speak the truth to the power. Otherwise, you end up with an emperor with no clothes. The way the emperor paraded down the street with no clothes is because no one was willing to speak truth to the emperor in power. No one was willing to stand up and say, "You're not wearing any clothes." Everyone went along with the facade that this silk or fabric was real and that it was okay, that it was invisible, that those that believed could see it, and no one wanted to be the person that stood up and said, "It's not real," except for the child. The child had the courage. That is an amazing thing about children.
1 minute.
Children they don't have the lived experience yet to be afraid to speak the truth. They still have the innocence of thinking that speaking the truth is what you are supposed to do. And it is. It is what you are supposed to do. It absolutely is what you are supposed to do. So thank you to Representative Zeffler for speaking truth to power, for telling the emperor they didn't have clothes, for standing up. It is essential for our democracy to have individuals stand up and speak out, even when it is hard.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh. Senator Hunt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is this my third opportunity?
Second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the attack in Montana on Representative Zeffler is an attack on all of us. It just is. It was done to silence her advocacy. It's silencing her constituents. She was duly elected just like all of them, and now their constituents don't have any representation in the House of Representatives. How is that right? It's so important that we not be silent about this from state to state to state. And it's so important that people stand up against this rising movement, this very radical movement, and say it is not welcome in Nebraska. And don't be fooled, it's creeping in, it's here. The retaliation and the punishment, the exclusion, the censuring. Somebody attempted to censure Senator Michaela Cavanaugh already this year for defending the trans rights of Nebraskans. So Representative Zeffler has been banned from the House floor in Montana, silenced for the remainder of the session, and she did have one opportunity to rise and make some remarks. And here are some of the things that she said just about 1 hour ago. She said, "It's my honor today to rise on behalf of my constituents for members of House District 100 and my members who elected me to represent them. This legislature has been systemically attacking that community. We have seen bills targeting our art forms, our books, our history, and our healthcare. And I rose up in defense of my community that day, speaking to the harms that these bills bring. A trans teen attempted to take their life watching that hearing. In that hearing, our caucus pleaded to the leader of that hearing to keep decorum. And we were told that many people have many different opinions about these things." Does that sound similar to something Senator Arch said a little while ago? We have to keep decorum because people have many different opinions on these things. But there's only one side that's causing spikes to the suicide hotline, isn't there? There's only one side. I mean, it goes without saying. I don't need to say it. Be real. Representative Zeffler also said, "If you use decorum to silence people who hold you accountable, then all you are doing is using decorum as a tool for oppression." When I continued to not be recognized to speak, my community came and said that they should let me speak. When the speaker gavelled down, he was driving a nail in the coffin, the nail of democracy. But you cannot kill democracy that easily, and that's why they kept chanting, "Let her speak." I'm not sure what comes next here, but I will do what I always have. I will rise in support of my community. I will take the hard and moral choice to stand up for the people who elected me to do so. And I'm grateful for those who stood up in defense of democracy. I hear from my constituents, I hear from your constituents that stood up on my behalf. I know in this building, in these quiet halls, the staff come up to me and say, "Thank you for defending our community." I will always stand up for them, and I will always stand up for democracy in the state of Montana. And those are the words of Representative Zeffler in Montana, who was censured today in Montana, for standing for trans rights, literally, you're going to be like, oh, Megan, you're exaggerating. She surely did some Antifa stuff or something.
1 minute.
Just Google it. Like, it's not that deep. Thank you, Mr. President. Just Google it, educate yourself about what's happening here. If you think that you're on the right side, if you think you're one of the good guys in this democracy, that you're just trying to protect kids, whatever it is you're telling yourself so you can sleep at night, although I hear there's a lot of people who are not sleeping at night, who are waking up at 2 a.m. and feeling the need to draft amendments and solve problems and things like that. Colleagues, the fact that you're waking up in the middle of the night shook about your own vote should be all you need to know. That you're doing the wrong thing. I've never woken up at 2 a.m. unable to sleep because of some vote I took. I'll put it that way. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to speak, and this is your third time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've never lost sleep over one of my votes either. I have lost sleep over this job. I have lost a lot of sleep over this job, over your votes, colleagues, but I have never once lost sleep over my vote. I have never once even anguished over a vote. I have always voted my conscience, always. And that is not easy. It is not expedient. It is hard. Sometimes I think people think that it's not hard for me because I am outspoken. I am outspoken. Yes. I am honest and direct and outspoken, and it is infuriating, I know. But that does not mean that it is not hard. It is hard. It is hard to take action that I know will have repercussions. It is hard. When I voted against LB 1107 in 2020, that was not easy. And the easiest thing in the entire universe that I could have done was voted for it. It had 44 votes. It didn't matter what I did. It did not matter if I voted for it or if I voted against it. It did not matter. But I voted against it. And it came at a cost. It came at a very real cost, a very real political cost to me personally. But I still voted against it because I believed it was bad public policy. And I never lost sleep over that. I lost a lot over that vote, but I never lost sleep over voting against it because it was bad public policy. It is not easy to stand up. It is not easy to stand alone. It is hard. But none of you were sent here to do easy things. You were sent here to change the world. You were sent here to change the world, whether that means making taxes more equitable for your community, for your constituency, whether it's environmental impact, education, healthcare. You were sent here to change the world, and changing the world is not easy. It is not easy. And it shouldn't be. Why am I standing up here talking at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the second bill on the agenda that I'm going to vote for, that's going to pass, that's going to get probably everyone to vote for it? Why? Because of another bill. That is why. That is why. Yesterday, and I was asked by numerous people, why did everything move all of a sudden yesterday? Why did everything move yesterday? Everything moved yesterday because this body did a good thing. This body elected to continue feeding 10,000 Nebraskans. Ridiculous as that might sound to people listening
1
and
minute.
watching at home, thank you. Listening and watching at home, that a good thing is electing to continue to feed 10,000 Nebraskans. Yes, we were on the verge of cutting off SNAP access to 10,000 Nebraskans. Yeah, I know, right? We're going to build a lake, we're going to build a canal, but we can't feed 10,000 Nebraskans. Yes, it is as ridiculous as it sounds. But because this body chose to do something good in this session, I chose to sit down. But I'm not going to keep sitting down because you are continuing to make another choice. And until something else changes, I am standing up. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Hunt, you are recognized, and this is your, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Madam President. Your Committee on Health and Human Services chaired by Senator Hansen reports Legislative Bill 204 to general file with committee amendments. Additionally, notice that the Appropriations Committee will hold a meeting under the North Balcony at 4:00 p.m. Appropriations under the North Balcony at 4:00. Additionally, your Committee on Enrollment Review reports Legislative Bill 562 to select file. That's all I have this time.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Senator Hunt, you're recognized, and this is your third opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a really big deal today, you guys. What happened in Montana? Maybe you don't care. Maybe you've never heard of this before, and so you don't think it's a big deal, or but if you go look at your websites and you get your newspapers, you're going to see everybody's talking about this. In the New York Times, they just dropped their story a couple minutes ago. The headline is, Montana House votes to discipline transgender lawmaker. Legislators voted to bar Representative Zoe Zephyr, the state's only transgender legislator, from the House chamber for the remainder of the legislative session, then disenfranchising all of her constituents, of course. From Helena, Montana. The Montana House of Representatives took the extraordinary step of blocking the state's only transgender lawmaker from the House floor for the remainder of the legislative session on Wednesday. After an escalating standoff over her ability to speak in the House, because they're just not calling on her. Like, once again, that's on them. Like, just let her talk. She's not saying anything wrong, nothing spicier than anything any of us have ever said. Over her ability to speak in the House led to heated protests and arrests on Monday and the abrupt cancellation of Tuesday's session. The vote was 68-32 in the Republican-controlled chamber. The Speaker adjourned the session immediately after the vote. Ms. Zephyr will still be allowed to cast votes during House proceedings for the remainder of the session, but must do so remotely. The move is the culmination of a week-long battle between House leadership and Representative Zoe Zephyr, who was barred from participating in deliberations on the House floor after she made impassioned comments during debate over a bill that would prevent hormone treatments for transgender minors. Same thing we're doing. The bill has since been sent to Governor Greg Gianforte, who has indicated he will sign it. It was one of a half-dozen similar bills targeting transgender youth that the legislature had considered in the last week alone, and it comes amid an avalanche of similar legislation in Republican-controlled legislatures across the country. Sue Vinton, the House Majority Leader, introduced the measure to discipline Ms. Zephyr, saying her actions, quote, disrupted and disturbed the orderly proceedings of this body. Is the introduction of 574 not disrupting and disturbing the orderly proceedings of this body? I guess I'd argue no, we're still according to the rules, but we got to a point where Senator Erdman had to change the whole rules in the middle of the thing. We got to the point where Speaker Arch had to stop debate in the middle of the thing and go have a 45-minute closed-door meeting in his office, do a mulligan, do a timeout, then come and reset the ball to make sure that that terrible bigoted bill could advance. So in that way, I guess I would say, yes, it has disturbed the orderly proceedings of this body. Speaking from the floor, Ms. Zephyr said she was rising up in defense of her constituents from Missoula, of her community, and, quote, of democracy itself. When the speaker asks me to apologize on behalf of decorum, what he's really asking me to do is be silent when my community is facing bills that get us killed. He's asking me to be complicit in this legislature's eradication of our community, she said. I refuse to do so, she added. I will always refuse to do so. Republican legislators have characterized transition care as harmful and experimental, arguing that young people should not be allowed to begin medically transitioning before they become adults. But major medical organizations, including the American Academy of Pediatrics, support this care and say that bans pose serious mental health risks to young people, infringing not only on their rights, but on the rights of doctors and patients. We also know that these bans impose, thank you, Madam Chair. We also know that these bans impose risks on people just by being introduced. The effects that these have on democracy themselves is serious, even happening in this body here in Nebraska. The furor over Ms. Zephyr began during an April 18th session when the House was considering the ban on transitional care. Ms. Zephyr said that if Republicans passed such a ban, it would put, quote, blood on your hands. House Republicans have been threatening disciplinary actions since that session. The Montana Freedom Caucus, a group of 21 conservative lawmakers, I wonder if they're related to the Freedom Doctors, Senator Kavanaugh, threatened to censure Ms. Zephyr, accusing her of, quote, attempting to shame the Montana legislative body by using hateful rhetoric. The caucus once again called for action on Monday and accused Ms. Zephyr of encouraging an insurrection. I will continue discussing this on my next time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Seeing no one else in the queue, Senator Kavanaugh, Michaela Kavanaugh, you are recognized to close on your motion.
Thank you, Madam President. The Freedom Doctors. Oh, yeah, the Freedom Doctors. That is an interesting group, we'll say. It's an interesting group. Okay, so AM 1281 adds on page 6, line 4 of the amended bill of LB 816 after military leave, it adds family medical leave. What is family medical leave? Well, kind of what it sounds like. So you have yourself, your own person, you get sick, you got your sick time, you take your sick time. But if you have a spouse or partner who has a major surgery and needs to be taken care of, let's say a massive coronary event, and they cannot be left at home alone, and they need just transportation to their rehabilitation, who knows? You could use family medical leave. If you have a child who has a major illness, and unfortunately in Nebraska, we are seeing an exponential increase in pediatric cancer. God forbid you have a child that has pediatric cancer. That is an intensive illness that is going to take up a lot of your time. You can use family medical leave. Let's say you have a baby and you need to care for them and yourself. You can use family medical leave. So you don't have to have maternity leave any longer because you have family medical leave. And you don't have to have paternity leave any longer because you have family medical leave. So you can take your leave under this one policy, a one-stop shop, shall we say, of leave. So it has to be a medically qualifying event. You can't just say my kid's got the sniffles and whatever. It has to be a medically qualifying event. If it's an extended leave, usually there has to be documentation from the doctor's office. When I took my leave, when I had one of my kids, and I had, I think 6 weeks of maternity is assumed medically necessary, and I wanted to take the additional 6 weeks that People try to take 12 weeks if you can. If you're lucky, you can try to take 12 weeks. But I had to have my doctor write a note for it. So I couldn't, it was not just assumed. In order to utilize my medical leave, I had to have a doctor's note. And I was very fortunate on all fronts. Oddly, when we talk about what other countries are doing medically, they all offer very generous and very, very robust leave. In the UK, you can take a year off when you have a kid. You don't get full pay that whole time. I think it's the first 6 months is full pay, and then it's like graduated down, like the next 3 months is 75%, and then the final 3 months is maybe 50%. But you get your job back, and you get a significant amount of your pay for that entire year. Now that's a good policy.
1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President. Okay. 1 minute. AM 1281 is a family medical leave amendment into the appropriation for the constitutional officers. Yeah, totally vote for it. Go bananas, have fun. Vote green for a Kavanaugh amendment. Why not? Try something new. Vote green for, a Michaela Kavanaugh amendment. I know people have voted for the other Senator Kavanaugh. Vote green for Senator Michaela Kavanaugh amendment. It will feel good. I promise you. You won't regret it. Thank you. Call of the House.
There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor, vote aye. All those opposed, vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk. Senators Blood, Kauth, Frederickson, Walls, Slama, Iba, Wayne, Merman, Dungan, Hunt, Arch, and John Kavanaugh, please return to the chamber. The House is under call. Senator Hunt, please return to the chamber. The House is under call. All unexcused senators have now returned to the chamber. The question before the body is the adoption of AM 1281 to LB 816. All those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote nay. Have all those voted who care to? Record, Mr. Clerk.
0 ayes, 31 nays, Mr. President, Madam President, on Amendment 1281.
The amendment is not adopted. Mr. Clerk, for items. I raise the call.
Madam President, next amendment, AM 1282, introduced by Senator Michaela Cavanaugh.
Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're welcome to open.
Thank you, Madam President. AM 1282. On page 6, line 5, after the first comma, insert paternity leave. We do have maternity leave, so we should add paternity leave. Fellas, this one's for you. This amendment is dedicated to all the gentlemen out there that want to take paternity leave. You're welcome. Yep, so that's what AM 1282 does. So I don't know if you all recall, there was a day, I've lost track of time, has no meaning any longer. There was a day where I spent a significant amount of time discussing TANF, temporary assistance to needy families. Okay, bear with me. Let's go on a journey here. TANF is temporary assistance to needy families. One of the programs under TANF is a fatherhood program. Yes, a fatherhood program, which we put, I don't know, maybe $2 million towards. Probably we're going to put $20 million towards it because that would be directing direct cash assistance away from the people who currently qualify for TANF and giving programming to people who financially don't qualify for TANF, but bygones, doesn't matter. Okay. We have this fatherhood program under TANF, and we put resources, mostly federal, towards it. Well, if we value fatherhood so much that we have created a program within a program to address fatherhood, then AM 1282 should be your jam. It should be the jelly you spread on your bread in the morning because it is paternity leave. How better to promote fatherhood than promoting paternity leave? Now, if we were to embark on a paternity leave program in the state, one thing I would suggest is a little bit of flexibility. Flexibility, you say, what's that? Well, let me tell you. Let's say we have 8 weeks of paternity leave. Okay, I think that's kind of a standard amount. More is always better, but we'll start with 8. You have 8 weeks of paternity leave. Do not require it to be taken consecutively. So, for example, the first 2 weeks, if you're bringing a baby home from the hospital, newborn, fresh out of the oven, the first 2 weeks you might want to take. Be home with your partner if that's how this all came to be. Help them recover physically, be there to, fold laundry. If there's other kids in the house, pick them up so that the person who just gave birth doesn't have to pick them up. All of those fun things. Okay, so you take those 2 weeks and then you've got 6 weeks. Well, if you're forced to take them consecutively, I'm sure you will. But if you're not forced to take them consecutively, and the person in this particular instance, there's lots of different scenarios we can go down, but in this particular instance, let's say that the other person actually gave birth and they have, let's just be super generous and think that their employer gave them 12 weeks. So that first 2 weeks you're home together. Then you go back to work and they're home with the kiddo for 12 weeks. You're on a waiting list because you got on it the moment you found out you were pregnant for a child care, because that's how it goes. I found out I was pregnant very early with my third kid. Long story. Anyways, and I already had a childcare. We had the sort of, you get kind of grandfathered in, so to speak. If you already have kids there, then you put your name in, and that the keeping siblings, etc. It was a year and 3 months later, after we put our name on a waiting list where we had priority as a family that already had 2 kids there, a year and 3 months before we got a spot. So let's just say you put your name in on a list for childcare and you're trying to extend out your time as much as possible. And the person who's staying home with the kid right out of the gate, let's say they have that 12 weeks, but your childcare does not kick in until your kid is, let's say, 16 weeks old. What to do? Well, if we had paternity leave that we didn't require you to take consecutively, by the way, then you could take that first 2 weeks, be home with your newborn baby. Hey, look at you. Vomit. Okay. And then you go back to work. Your partner stays until 12 weeks. And then you take the rest of your leave at the end when your partner goes back to work. I will tell you also that probably mentally will help your partner go back to work, because I remember when I dropped my first child off at childcare for the very first time, you would have thought someone had just been murdered in front of me. I was hysterical because I was going back to work. I was dropping my first kid off, first day of childcare, first time going back to work. It was horrible and traumatic, and I had to sit in the parking lot for a very long time because it was not safe to drive. So I was also late for my first day back at work. But if I hadn't had to do that on my first day back, if I could have left my precious little baby with their dad or mom or partner, if I could have left them at home with that person, I wouldn't have had that experience on my first day back at work. And then when I had, maybe worked for a couple of weeks and then it was time to take them to childcare, it probably would have been an easier transition, to be honest. An easier transition. But we are where we are. Why am I talking about this? Paternity leave. AM 1282. That's what it is. It inserts paternity leave into LB 816. Now, this is just for constitutional officers, but it's a start. It's a start. Why not start somewhere? Let's start with constitutional officers and give them paternity leave. It's as good a place as any. No step too small to take. It is a start. Mr. President, how much time do I have left?
2 minutes, 45 seconds.
Thank you. I used that time of asking you the time to get in the queue. Aren't I sneaky? Okay. So maternity leave is already language in this bill. This would be inserting paternity leave. What does it do in effect? Nothing really. Doesn't pay for anything. It's more of a conversation, a thought exercise, if you will. But we're so family centered and family forward focused all of the time, nuclear family, not nuclear like the bomb, that figure, why not? Let's put our no money, there's no money in this, but let's put our money where our mouth is, metaphorically speaking. So paid leave has always been a passion of mine. Paid leave is one of the things that we can do to ensure greater equity in our workforce, higher quality of living for the people of Nebraska. And if we do it in a collective way, where just like unemployment insurance, it is contributed into by the greater community so that it can support those in need of it the most when the need arises. That's the whole point. Okay.
1 minute.
1 minute. Thank you, Mr. President. The ability to take time off from work when faced with an illness or injury is a fundamental right that should be available to everyone. But unfortunately, many employees in our community are not currently afforded this privilege. Without access to paid medical leave, individuals are forced to choose between their health and their income, often leading to negative outcomes for both employees and the community as a whole. A paid medical leave program can have significant financial benefits for our community. First and foremost, it can help reduce the spread of illness and disease. When individuals are unable to take time off from work,
That's your time,
Thank
Senator.
you.
And you're next in the queue.
When people are unable to take time off from work due to illness, they are more likely to come to work sick, potentially infecting others in the workplace. This can lead to decreased productivity and increased healthcare costs for both the employer and the community. In addition, a paid medical leave program can reduce the burden on our healthcare system. When employees are able to take time off to recover from an illness or injury, they are more likely to fully recover and return to work at full capacity. This can reduce the need for long-term medical care, which can be costly for both the individual and the community. By reducing the strain on our healthcare system, we can allocate resources more efficiently and ensure that everyone has access to the care they need. A paid medical leave program can also lead to increased job satisfaction and employee retention, where employees feel valued and supported by their employer. They are more likely to remain with that employer long term. This can reduce the costs associated with hiring and training new employees and increase the overall productivity of the workplace. Paid medical leave program can have a positive impact on the local economy. When employees are able to take time off from work without fear of losing their income, they are more likely to spend money in the local community. This can lead to increased economic growth and job creation, benefiting everyone in the community. Paid medical leave program is not only a moral imperative, it is also a smart financial decision for our community. By supporting the health and well-being of our employees, we can reduce healthcare costs, increase productivity, promote economic growth. I urge this body to consider, at least for today, adding to this bill paternity leave. It's not paid medical leave, but it is a start down a comprehensive program of paid medical leave that would encompass family leave and individual leave. And in encompassing family leave and individual leave, we would also be using maternity and paternity leave. Mr. President, how much time do I have left?
1 minute, 45 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that was, do I have one more time? I got in the queue. I think I have one more time. Yeah, I'm seeing head nods. Cool. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, paid leave. So my first year, Senator Sue Crawford brought a bill. She brought it numerous times. She worked really hard on it. She worked really hard on it for 8 years. She kept bringing it. She kept compromising with people. She kept listening to opposition. She had meetings. She traveled the state. I traveled with her once to meet with members of the state chamber across the
1
state
minute.
to hear about their concerns about paid family leave. And we still never passed it. But she worked really hard on it. And I got to tell you, legit, not being saucy here, people loved Senator Crawford. People in this legislature loved Senator Crawford. And she worked really hard on this bill. And I think if we didn't have term limits and she was still here, she probably would have gotten it done. But unfortunately, she just didn't have just enough time to do what she needed to do, which was listen to the opposition, continue to take feedback, make adjustments, make compromises.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Hunt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to AM 1282 and in support of LB 816 to fulfill our constitutional duty to appropriate funds for salaries of constitutional officers. And I rise in horror at what's happening around this country with LGBTQ members of legislators being investigated, being censured, being expelled. And this just happened today, about an hour ago in Montana, to Representative Zoe Zephyr, who represents District 100 in the Montana House of Representatives. In the New York Times, which I was reading before, they continue, instead of issuing a formal reprimand, well, I'll say the last part one more time. The Montana Freedom Caucus, a group of 21 conservative lawmakers, threatened to censure Ms. Zephyr, accusing her of, quote, attempting to shame the Montana legislative body by using hateful rhetoric. The caucus once again called for action against Ms. Zephyr on Monday and accused her of encouraging a, quote, insurrection. Instead of issuing a formal reprimand, lawmakers have refused to call on Ms. Zephyr for any bill for consideration before the House, including environmental and economic measures, as well as transgender issues. On Tuesday, Republican leaders canceled a planned session of the House, a day after protests led to arrests in the chamber. In a hasty news conference, Speaker Matt Reger blamed Representative Zephyr for the conflict, saying that, quote, the only person who is silencing Representative Zephyr is Representative Zephyr, unquote. Legislators started Wednesday's session with a final reading of bills before turning to the status of Ms. Zephyr, who spoke from the House floor for the first time in a week, and the last time, we now know. The gallery was closed to the public, but the session was broadcast online. Montana politics, once a competitive mix of Democrats and Republicans, has become much more conservative in recent years. Governor Gianforte, a Republican, is a fundamentalist Christian and a wealthy former software executive. Republicans hold a supermajority in both the state House and Senate, and one conservative family from Flathead Valley in particular, the Reegers, wields great influence over both chambers. Keith Reeger is the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. His daughter Amy is chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, and his son Matt is the Speaker of the House, who has repeatedly refused to recognize Ms. Zephyrs' request to speak on the floor. The number of transgender and non-binary people elected to public office nationally increased to at least 70 this year from 25 in 2019, according to the LGBTQ+ Victory Fund, which supports these candidates. Of those officials, there are 14 sitting state legislators who are transgender or non-binary, said Elliot Imsey, the executive director of the LGBTQ+ Victory Institute, which is affiliated with the fund. If the Montana House votes to censure Ms. Zephyr, he said, 2 of those 14 will have been formally censured. The other is Representative Marie Turner of Oklahoma, a non-binary lawmaker who was censured last month after inviting a protester into their office. Leaders of the state house said the lawmaker had harbored a fugitive wanted for questioning. Mr. MC noted it was unusual for state legislatures to censure lawmakers, that 1 in 7 of our trans and non-binary state legislators have been targeted as pure politics. And now, Megan's addendum, 2 in 7 have now been formally censured. Over the past few years, Republican state lawmakers have introduced a wave of bills to regulate the lives of transgender youths by restricting the bathrooms they can use, the sports teams they can join, and the medical care they can receive. These efforts have been particularly aggressive since the start of the 2023 legislative session. This year, 11 states have passed laws prohibiting what's known as gender-affirming care for young people. Before this year, just 3 state legislatures had enacted full or partial bans. On Tuesday, Doug Burgum, the Republican governor of North Dakota, signed a bill limiting transgender people's use of certain restrooms, locker rooms, and other facilities that align with their gender identity. And in Missouri, an unusually restrictive rule that would limit transgender care for adults could go into effect as soon as Thursday unless it is blocked by a judge. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to speak. This is your last time before your closing.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so what I've been talking about here is AM 1282, and this is to add the language of paternity leave into the bill that is appropriating the funds for our constitutional officers. So, I was looking over at Senator Hunt while she was speaking, and I saw some like animated conversation happening over in, let's call it the press corps. And in my mind, the press corps was having an animated conversation over the Oxford comma, because that's what I like to imagine you all are talking about all of the time. So I'm going to talk about the Oxford comma because I assume that that's what you were talking about. The Oxford comma, also known as the serial comma, is the comma used before the conjunction and. In a list of 3 or more items, its usage has been a topic of debate among writers, editors, editors, and grammarians for decades. However, there are several good reasons to support the use of the Oxford comma. I am taking a controversial stand in support of the Oxford comma today. Let it be known for the record that I support the Oxford comma. First and foremost, the Oxford comma can help to clarify meaning in a sentence. And I think that this is really the essential part of the function of the Oxford comma. Without it, it is chaos. What words are grouped together? What words are not grouped together? Chaos. Without it, a sentence can be ambiguous, leading to confusion or misinterpretation. For example, consider the sentence, I would like to thank my parents, comma, Oprah Winfrey, comma, and God. Without the Oxford comma, it's unclear whether Oprah Winfrey and God are the speaker's parents. My parents, Oprah Winfrey and God. Yes. Is that my parents? No, those are not my parents. It would be pretty amazing though if they were. But the Oxford comma clarifies it. Clearly, Oprah Winfrey and God are not my parents. I'm just thanking them in addition to thanking my parents. So it clarifies whether they are separate entities being thanked. However, with the Oxford comma, it becomes clear Oprah Winfrey and God are two separate entities being thanked in addition to the speaker's parents. I would like to thank my parents, Oprah Winfrey and God. Okay. Secondly, next, the use of the Oxford comma can help to ensure consistency in writing, which we saw, if we all remember, and I'm sure we do, because it was pretty exciting, when I read the draft BEAD plan on broadband, and I was editing it as we went along and questioning if we were consistently using or not using the Oxford comma. So, yes, the use of the Oxford comma can help ensure consistency in writing. By using the Oxford comma consistently throughout a piece of writing, the writer can avoid potential errors or inconsistencies that may arise from omitting it in some instances and using it in others.
1 minute.
I'm really talking myself into the Oxford comma here. The Oxford comma is widely used in many style guides, including the Chicago Manual of Style. Oh, here we go. Here are the style guides, friends. The Chicago Manual Style, the Oxford Style Manual, and the MLA Handbook. By using the Oxford comma, writers can adhere to the conventions of these style guides and avoid potential confusion or errors. In conclusion, the Oxford comma is a valuable tool for writers that can help to clarify meaning, comma, ensure consistency, comma, and adhere to established style guides. Its usage may be continued to be debated, but for those who value clear and precise communication, the Oxford comma is an important punctuation mark to consider using. And I now need to know how
That's
it is
your
in
time,
APA.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hunt, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this effort in Montana to censure Representative Zephyr is just the latest attempt to punish LGBTQ elected officials, allies, and community members and push them out of the conversation completely. And that's happening across the country just for signaling support of LGBTQ people. Representative Marie Turner in Oklahoma, the first non-binary representative in Oklahoma, was censured in early March for helping a demonstrator. Representative Justin Jones and Representative Justin Pearson of Tennessee were both expelled from the legislature for participating with constituents for protesting a lack of action on gun safety legislation. In that same legislature, a white colleague, the two that were expelled were Black, a white colleague was spared from expulsion for the same violation. For anti-LGBTQ lawmakers to launch a verbal and legislative and procedural war against transgender people in Nebraska, in Montana, in Oklahoma, in Illinois, in Missouri, in Ohio, in Texas, in Florida, in Nevada, in Idaho, Oklahoma, Kansas, South Dakota, North Dakota, all over this country, and censure Montana's only trans lawmaker just for telling the truth that they have blood on their hands is destructive and absurd. What Representative Zephyr said is incomparable to the harmful and hateful rhetoric of these anti-LGBTQ lawmakers, and it's incomparable to the undeniable harm that this legislation is going to have on the people of Montana. It's incomparable to the measurable, serious harm that bills like LB 574 are going to have on the people of Nebraska. And people like Representative Zephyr, their voices are needed now more than ever at this moment. And our opponents know that. Our opponents understand that. Our opponents want to pass these bills at any cost, taking you moderates along with them as collateral damage, circling the wagons around you and telling you you don't have a choice, as they are determined to silence the people who are standing up for this community. Government representation for LGBTQ people in the United States is more important than ever. It's so essential for all people to be able to see themselves in positions of power, reflected by the people who make decisions about their lives, especially in conservative states like Montana, especially in conservative states like Nebraska. Transgender people have to be allowed to have conversations about their lives. This is the same recycled playbook that we've seen year after year in the 70s and 80s and 90s around the AIDS crisis. Cutting gay men in particular out of public life, not letting them talk about their families and their experiences. Even up until recent years, not having marriage equality, not allowing gay couples to adopt. Still in Nebraska, if I was married to a woman and I had a picture of a woman on my desk and I worked for a private company in this state, I could be fired for that. So how does it make sense that I get elected to the state legislature in this state? I've got an office in the Capitol and I could have a picture of my wife on my desk and nothing happens
1
to
minute.
me. Thank you, Mr. President. But all of you would vote to say that in a private business they can. That makes no sense. The silencing and the censure against Representative Zephyr for speaking up in support of transgender Montanans is an attack on our nation's democratic ideals. It's an attack on free speech. It's an attack on our values. And it's an assault on democracy to suppress the already underrepresented, already marginalized voices of LGBTQ people and people of color and the lawmakers who are elected to represent them. This is a very disturbing trend across our entire country. As LGBTQ people and their allies in Tennessee, Oklahoma, and other states have also faced recent
That's your
threats of
time.
censure.
Senator, you're next in the queue, and that's your last time on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. As people all over this country have faced threats of censure who are elected by their constituents to come in here and do the same exact job as you, it's discrimination too. It's discrimination in the exact same way. It is BS and it's discrimination. For me to have this complaint, this formal investigation hand-delivered to me in my office saying that I have a conflict of interest because I'm a mother. Do mothers not have conflicts of interest who may be voting on LB 626 to ban abortion care in Nebraska? There's like 14 of you who grow yellow corn in here. You don't have a conflict of interest for contributing to the ethanol industry? Talked all about that yesterday and, Thursday or whatever day we were here. It goes without saying. I think when things go without saying, we can let them go without saying, but it must be said that the standard for what is a conflict of interest has reached an absurd point. Senator Brandt said, trying to be supportive, but he said, I don't even think it's worth talking about. No, all of you need to stare in the face of what you have brought to this legislature, what you have brought to this state by insisting that LB 574, come hell or high water, make it across the finish line. Whether we have to pause the session in the middle of the final minutes of select file reading, select file debate, so that Speaker Arch and Senator Kauth can have a private meeting for 45 minutes. I've never heard of it. Nobody has. We had to close the chamber doors after that vote because protesters in the rotunda were yelling and chanting and protesting so passionately. And Speaker Arch says, well, we all must moderate our passions. The problem is when we get too passionate. Many people would say that's fascist rhetoric. and gaslighting, at least, to say the reason you're upset, equivocating being upset at someone taking your rights away as the same as being upset that someone was rude to you, that somebody sent you a mean email, that you had to hear a protester yelling, that's what's uncivil, that's what's uncollegial, that it was a breach of decorum for Representative Zoe Zephyr to say that when increases in suicide come to Montana because of bans on trans health care and exclusion of LGBTQ Montanans, that those representatives who voted for that bill will have, quote, blood on their hands. To say that that's violence, inciting an insurrection? Mind you, there was an insurrection in this country on January 6th. They really did try that. It is not the same thing as a duly elected official saying that lawmakers will have blood on their hands for supporting a ban on trans health care. This false equivalency has got to stop. Whether it's accusing me of having a conflict of interest for being a loving mother, whether it's saying that the first trans lawmaker in the state of Montana trying to stop the suicide of trans kids is the same as an insurrection. And get real, be serious. Trans kids they're just kids. They're just kids like everyone else's kids. I know that Senator Kauth is very afraid of her son seeing a woman in the locker room or something like that.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. But these kids are just kids like everybody else. My son is in track. He's a long distance runner. And today he has a meet. And it's maybe his 4th or 5th meet. And I have not been to one of them yet this year. It's my only child's first foray into athletics. And I haven't been able to see him one time running because I've been here fighting for his rights. But I think I'll get to go to his meet on Friday. So I'm excited about that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hunt. See no other names in the queue. Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to close on AM 1282.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, AM 1282 inserts paternity leave on page 6, line 5. I have more to say about the Oxford comma, but first I want to talk about paternity leave and how it can positively impact health outcomes of both fathers and their families. Paid paternity leave is a type of leave granted to fathers after the birth or adoption of a child, allowing them to take time off from work to care for their newborn or newly adopted child and to bond. Maternity leave has been a norm for quite some time. Paternity leave is a relatively new concept that has been gaining traction in recent years. One of the main reasons why paternity leave is crucial is that it allows fathers to bond with their newborn children, which is essential for child's social and emotional development. Research has shown that fathers who take paternity leave are more likely to be involved in their children's lives, which has positive impacts on the child's academic achievement, behavior, and mental health. So this really should be part of our whole fatherhood program under TANF, paternity leave. Moreover, paid paternity leave can have significant benefits for fathers' mental and physical health. Caring for a newborn can be a stressful experience, and taking time off from work can help fathers cope with the emotional and physical demands of parenting. Studies have also shown that fathers who take paternity leave are less likely to suffer from postpartum depression, which is a serious mental health condition that affects many new parents. Paid paternity leave can also have positive impacts on the health outcomes of mothers and children. When fathers are involved in childcare, mothers are more likely to return to work, which can have economic benefits for the family. Fathers who take paternity leave are more likely to be involved in household chores, which can reduce the burden on mothers and improve their mental health. Paid paternity leave is a vital policy that can have numerous positive impacts on families' health outcomes. Allowing fathers to bond with their children, comma, improving their mental and physical health, comma, and have positive ripple effects on the entire family. So, colleagues, I encourage you to vote for AM 1282, an amendment that would add paternity leave to the underlying bill of the salaries for constitutional officers in LB 816. How much time do I have left?
1 minute, 56 seconds.
Is that enough time to revisit the Oxford comma? I don't know. I got a lot to say about the Oxford comma and the APA style. It's a controversy. Just spoiler. You know what? I think I'm going to wait for when I have a 10-minute opening. We should not truncate the conversation about the APA style guide controversy and the Oxford comma. That should not be truncated. So, with that, I would request a call to the House and just a machine vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kavanaugh. There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
6 ayes, 3 nays, place House under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. All unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under call. Senators Conrad, Kauth, Frederickson, Walls, Bostelman, McDonald, and Erdman, please return to the chamber and record your presence. The House is under call. All unexcused senators are now present. Members, the question is the adoption of AM 1282. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
0 ayes, 28 nays, Mr. President, on the adoption of the amendment.
The amendment is not adopted. I raise the call. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, regarding Legislative Bill 816, Senator Michaela Cavanaugh would move to strike Section 1.
Senator Cavanaugh, you're recognized to open on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. My apologies. I realized that those were still sitting on my desk as we were voting. So that was a little bit, I had those written for several hours and forgot to submit them. Okay. 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 APA versus the Oxford comma. Dun, dun, dun. The use of the Oxford comma in APA, or American Psychological Association style of writing, is somewhat controversial. According to the current APA publication manual, 7th edition, the Oxford comma should only be used when it is necessary to avoid ambiguity. This means that it should be used in a list of 3 or more items only when omitting it would create confusion or change the meaning of the sentence. For example, consider the following sentence. The study included 3 conditions, : condition A, comma, condition B, and condition C. No comma there. In this case, the Oxford comma is not necessary because omitting it does not change the meaning of the sentence. However, if the sentence were written as, this study includes 3 conditions, condition A, comma, condition B, comma, and condition C, in this case, the Oxford comma is necessary because omitting it would potentially create ambiguity and confusion. The study included 3 conditions. The use of the Oxford comma in this sentence makes it clear that condition C is a separate item in the list and not a combination of condition B and C. Yes, I believe so. In general, APA style emphasizes clarity and precision in writing. And the use of the Oxford comma should be guided by this principle. Some prefer to use the Oxford comma consistently. I am one of those people. I think that consistent use of the Oxford comma is paramount to clarity. I realize this is a controversial stance because I am a fan of the APA writing style. So it is incongruous with my own desire to utilize the APA writing style. Fortunately for me, I don't write much anymore. I just talk. And if I do write, I'm writing for myself to talk. So comma or no comma. But I do enjoy reading. And so I like that consistency of the Oxford comma. Just use it. Just use it. It's always going to provide clarity. It's never going to provide ambiguity. So use it. What's the harm? What's the harm in using the Oxford comma? I get it. Hardliners on the APA style. I get it. You want to be precise all of the time. And if the comma is unnecessary for clarity, I understand the desire to not utilize it because it isn't necessary, but it isn't harmful. And it provides a sense of consistency in the style of writing. Hence the controversy over the Oxford comma. It is really one of those things. You either love it, or you hate it, or you're completely indifferent about it. But it's one of those things. I personally love the Oxford comma, as is evidenced by the amount that I discuss the Oxford comma. There's lots of different memes and GIFs and GIFs and I don't even know. I'm saying all the things wrong. I'm saying them all wrong all of the time, like saying Rick Ainsley earlier today. I know. This brain of mine, this noggin, it's holding on, barely. So where was I? I was probably talking about Moonstruck. No, I'm kidding. We are at 5:07, and I believe we typically break for dinner at 5:30 to 6 o'clock, the early bird special. And no, the early bird special will be 4. We're not quite there, but close. So yeah, we've got about 23 minutes before we break for dinner, and just kind of like, all right, well, we've talked about the Oxford comma. We've gone through the controversy, Oxford comma, APA style. How does the Chicago style handle it? Are they just willy-nilly, just free, riding free with that comma, using it whenever? I see what's happening. I see what's happening here. We've got some excitement over hot cocoa happening. The Chicago style. I think I should dig in over the dinner break. Perhaps I will dig in on the Chicago style comma stance on the Oxford comma, not Chicago style pizza, which this might be a controversial stance as well. I don't like deep dish pizza. It's not for me. Had a conversation last night about Valentino's pizza. I do like Valentino's pizza. That is not deep dish pizza. It's as deep dish as I would get in my pizza. I do like Valentino's pizza. What I had recently, oh my God, I still have dreams about this focaccia bread. That focaccia. Oh, some focaccia bread from Goldenrod Bakery, and I am still dreaming about it. And one of the things about it, in addition to its just sheer buttery deliciousness, was that it also reminded me of Pizza Hut pizza in like the best possible way. And when I was growing up, I worked at Cinema Center, movie theater that no longer exists in Omaha, but I worked there, and next door to the movie theater was the Pizza Hut. But in grade school, before I was old enough to drive, my parents would, or other parents, who knows, would drop us 7th graders off at the movie theater, and we would go to dinner at Pizza Hut because it was just at the other side of the parking lot. We would go. It was so cool. We felt so cool. Go to Pizza Hut and order our personal pan pizzas, and then go to the movie theater and watch the movie My Girl and cry your eyes out because that is a horribly, horribly depressing movie. But I remember doing that in grade school. So the focaccia bread from Goldenrod just took me back to that time. And it's delicious and super buttery and just really amazing. Just really amazing. I don't know if it's butter. Maybe it's oil. Who knows? I don't know what genius magic they are whipping up over there, but it is delicious. Okay. How much time do I have left on this one?
1 minute, 40 seconds.
I keep asking you, and I keep getting that 1 minute and 40 seconds on my 10-minute opening. That seems to be where I hit, where I'm like, hey, am I almost done? I am almost done, but but still 1 minute, 40 seconds. Thank you for that, Mr. President. Okay, so this strikes something and I don't remember what it strikes. So I'm going to pull it up and look and see. We are on LB 816 and we are on a floor amendment. And what does that floor amendment do? I don't know. Let's find out. Here
1 minute.
we go. Thank you, Mr. President. This is floor amendment 73. Okay, floor amendment 73. Strike section 1. Okay, let's see what that does. All right, section 1. All right, section 1. Okay, got to go all the way up to the front of the page. Section 1. Okay, don't vote for this, friends. Section 1, appropriation language. There are hereby appropriated for FY 2023 to 24 and FY 2024 to 25 the amounts specified in this act or so much as may be necessary for the salaries and benefits of officers of the Nebraska state government. So it would be unkind to vote for this.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you.
You're next in the queue.
Thank you. Just gonna. Okay. It would be unkind to vote for this because it it allows the money to be appropriated. It's really the authorizing language. And without it, our constitutional officers will not get paid. So, oh, sorry. Okay, so that is like section 5 is Supreme Court judges' salaries. Section 6 is Court of Appeals judge salaries. Section 7, retired judge salaries. Section 8, district and juvenile court judges salaries. Section 9, county court judges' salaries. Section 10, the governor. Section 11, this is awkward. If you vote for this, we will not be able to pay our presiding officer, the lieutenant governor. Again, don't vote for this amendment. I know, I was concerned that you might, but just don't do it. Resist the urge. Okay, section 12, Secretary of State. Section 13, Auditor of Public Accounts. Section 14, Attorney General. Section 15, State Treasurer. Section, what one was I on? Section 16, Public Service Commission. Section 17, Board of Parole salaries. I didn't know that they were constitutional officers. Is this constitution? That's what this is, right? Yeah. All right. I did not know that the Board of Parole were constitutional officers. Good to know. Section 18, the Tax Commissioner. I hate to admit this. I don't know who the tax commissioner is. I'm assuming it's different than the treasurer. Okay. Section 19, Workers' Compensation Court judges' salaries. Section 20, Workers' Compensation Court retired and acting judges' salaries. So, let's see, that is it. That's the last one. All right. So again, FA 73, it just, oh, pardon me. FA 73 basically strikes the authorizing language for the appropriation of the funds to pay all these people. And as I said on the previous bill, we should definitely pay people for their work. Would I like to get paid as much as these people? Absolutely. Any of them. Because, yeah, they all get paid at least somewhat of a livable wage, if not an actual livable wage. I mean, this includes, I assume that this includes benefits. So it's not an exact, oh, it has, it lists the salary limit. Which is interesting because there's not consistency. Like I'm looking at the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, auditor of public accounts. So the secretary of state.
1 minute.
Thank you. And the auditor make the same amount, but the attorney general makes more. The lieutenant governor makes less. Sorry for that, lieutenant governor. The state treasurer makes the same as the auditor, and the secretary of state. Seems kind of odd that they're not like, there's no parity across these. I wonder how that's decided. I mean, it's in statute because the amounts are not changed at all in this bill. Did we decide that? Did we like arbitrarily decide to pay this position more and this position less? And frankly, personally,
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you.
And Senator Michaela Cavanaugh, you're recognized to speak, and this is your last time before your close.
Thank you, Mr. President. You're going to like this one, Mr. President. I'm on the salaries. I think we should give you a raise. I think that the lieutenant governor should be paid on par with the other constitutional officers for a couple of reasons. One of them being he has to sit here and listen to me talk for hours on end. There's probably some like workman's comp pay that you should get with that. So at the bare minimum, that should be a reason for a raise. But yeah, we must have set this. Historically, I am curious. We must have set the salaries. And I wonder how long ago we set the salaries. And are we keeping up parity with these salaries? Because again, this is a similar issue. Like, yes, these are much closer to like real livable wages, but these are not like, this is not, I know that the lieutenant governor has been a successful attorney in his life and in his career. This isn't like a windfall for him, and we should be paying for the service. So I feel like we could put more money towards these constitutional officers' salaries. And I apologize that I didn't try to do that between general and select, but we are where we are. So maybe we can pull it back from final for a specific amendment and do the pay raises then. Well, who knows? We'll see. Hazard pay. That's the word I was looking for, not workman's comp. Hazard pay. You should get hazard pay for having to sit in here all the time. As should everyone get hazard pay. You all should get hazard pay. Okay, so I'm almost out of time, and then I have my close, and then we'll probably get to a vote on this floor amendment, and then we'll probably break for dinner. So that'll be that. Great. How much time do I have left on this time, Mr. President?
2 minutes, 45 seconds.
Okay, thank you. All right, so striking section 1 of this amendment is going to strike the authorizing language for LB 816. Don't recommend it. Not a great idea. Don't do it. Okay, but I think I have talked on that enough. So I'm going to go back to a place where I was earlier. I am going to dig in on the APA versus the Chicago style and the Oxford comma, but that will be after dinner. So for now, I'm going to go back to the article that I was reading earlier. That is groups help lawmakers pursue civility and bipartisanship, the unicorns of politics. I like to use that term like a unicorn. Oh, it's a magical unicorn. But I probably shouldn't use it so much because the reality is a magical unicorn isn't a real thing. So saying you're a magical unicorn is like, or this is a magical unicorn, is essentially saying that you don't think that it's real. It's a fantasy. So the unicorn of politics, it's fantasy. But, all right, despite limits, public favors bipartisanship. For all this talk of bipartisanship benefits, is there a downside? Some legislators say they have encountered backlash from constituents who don't want them to compromise. Okay. Harvard, I'm sorry, 1 minute.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. Harbridge Young, the Northwestern professor, says her research shows that in primary elections, where the party's most partisan voters are likely to turn out, candidates can face opposition for having compromised to reach agreement with the other side. But she notes that the outside of that arena, there's a strong evidence the public favors bipartisanship. And no one is saying all divides could disappear. Bipartisanship has its limits. Quote, I don't want to sugarcoat it. Politics is a rough and tumble business, Harwell says, adding that she's encouraged about civility work in state houses. I should remind everyone that this is actually a current article. It is from March 21st, 2023.
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you.
And now you're recognized for your close on the floor amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so yes, this article is from a month ago, and the person speaking now says that she's encouraged about civility work in state houses. Meanwhile, Senator Hunt has been sharing with us the complete opposite of civility work in a specific state house in Montana. But I will continue to read this article for my remaining time. Okay, I think there's great opportunity at the state level because many of the folks that go on to national politics start at the state legislative level. And it's a great training ground at a smaller capacity to say we can work things out even though the issue is difficult. Bipartisanship ultimately is a path toward regaining public trust, Harwell says. Civility is not just good manners, it's really being able to get something done, she says. And if I hear anything from the public right now, it's that they are hungering and thirsting for our elected officials to come together and work out solutions. Now, this is from a podcast, Civility, 3 Paths to the Prize. It is Kelly Griffin and is the host of NCSL's Across the Aisle podcast. Okay, Civility, 3 Paths to the Prize. 3, I wonder if they will use the Oxford comma. Whether you're waiting in line in a public place or stuck in traffic, examples of incivility are all too common. State legislatures are rife with their own examples. In some forums, the art of civility, of speaking honestly, openly, and courteously to others seems to have been lost. But there is hope. The nonprofit South Dakota News Watch reported a recent upswing in civility in the state's legislature. That follows the 2022 censure of a state representative and a poll that year by the nonprofit news group in which a majority of state residents said civility was on the decline. The improved lawmaking process in peer and improved discussion on hot topics is benefiting the residents of South Dakota because stronger legislation is being passed. Representative Orrin Lesmeister told Newswatch. Senator Helene Duhamel, added that legislators should behave like the leaders they are. If you don't treat people well, how in the world do you ever expect to work with them and find a compromise or have them see your point of view? Although debates over legislation did not become less contentious, a spirit of bipartisanship prevailed. When dealing with the challenging issues, here are 3 paths to greater civility in all aspects of life. Before I start, Mr. President, how much time do I have?
1 minute, 18 seconds.
Oh, I was so hoping you were going to say 40 seconds again. 1 minute, 40 seconds. All right. The 3 paths: ethics, example, endurance. Okay. To be clear about ethics, to be clear about your internal values and what
1
guides
minute.
you. Thank you, Mr. President. What guides your conduct? What do you believe about civility? How do you promote civility in your life? Are you constantly searching within to note what's important to you? 2, example. Set the example and lead with your actions. How do you treat others? An important test of civility is how you treat those who have no power over you. The store clerk, the custodian, the restaurant server. Do you give them the same respect as those with authority over you? How do you respond when you are treated in an uncivil manner? Do you respond in kind or do you take the high road? Endurance. Has your civility lasted? Are you striving to be civil each day and with each interaction? And although it's sometimes difficult to maintain an air of civility, do you try?
That's your time, Senator.
Thank you. Call of the House, machine vote.
Thank you, Senator. There's been a request to place the House under call. The question is, shall the House go under call? All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
6 ayes, 4 nays, place House under call.
The House is under call. Senators, please record your presence. Those unexcused senators outside the chamber, please return to the chamber and record your presence. Those unauthorized personnel, please leave the floor. The House is under the call. Senators Raybold, Conrad, Wishart, Bostar, McDonald, Ibach, John Kavanaugh, and Brandt, please return to the chamber and record your presence. The House is under call. Senators Conrad, Bostar, McDonald, John Kavanaugh, and Brandt, please return to the chamber and record your presence. The House is under call. All unexcused senators are present. Members, the question is the adoption of FA 73. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. Record, Mr. Clerk.
0 ayes, 33 nays, Mr. President, on the adoption of FA 73.
The amendment is not adopted. Mr. Clerk, for items.
Mr. President, your Committee on Nebraska Retirement Systems, chaired by Senator McDonald, reports Legislative Bill 198 to general file with committee amendments. Additionally, amendments and motions to be printed, Mr. President, from Senator Reapy to LB 191 and Senator Blood to LB 757. That's all I have this time, Mr. President.
We will stand at ease until 6:05.